All right. The Maryland Made podcast provides timely, relevant, and practical information to empower student athletes to explore their potential and pursue their passions. We facilitate an inclusive environment for student athletes to refine their leadership, explore professional possibilities, and enact change in their communities. On today's episode, we have Mikah Seger, a sophomore on the men's soccer team. Today, we'll be diving deeper into men's mental health as we hope to aid in breaking the stigma for men's mental health. Micah will share his thoughts and perspectives to encourage more men to speak out and to seek help when needed. To kickstart this conversation, Micah, please share a little more about yourself and why you chose to come to UMD.
Well, I think just growing up in Maryland my whole life, uh, Maryland, the University of Maryland is such a big part of what goes on in the state. Uh, just between football and the sports, the scholastic side of things, being one of the top public schools in the nation. It's just if you live in Maryland, you know about University of Maryland, probably seen it. But just growing up here my whole life, going to a lot of the soccer games when I was younger. Uh, just this is the only place that I wanted to go to college at if I attended college. So it's my dream landing spot. Things worked out to where I actually ended up there. So
Love that. And we love having you, Micah. So, getting to know you for the past like 7 or 8 months now, you've definitely expressed your interest in men's mental health. We know that mental health impacts everyone, regardless of their gender identity. However, today we're focusing more on men's mental health and aiding in breaking that stigma. Can you start off by telling us why you think there's a stigma around men's mental health?
I think there's a stigma around men's mental health, just because in today's day and age, the men are supposed to come off as strong, uh, independent. Like I can handle everything myself. I don't need help. So it kind of leads into people thinking or men not feeling like they can reach out for help. Like they have to be independent, kind of rely on themselves to get through whatever they're going through. So whether it's seeking help, a lot of men aren't comfortable with seeking help. Um, People kind of look down on men, view them as weak if they see them reach out for help or see them struggling. So I think that's one of the biggest causes of stigma and what really needs to change in order to kind of bring more awareness support.
Yeah, I think you made a really great point, when you hit on societal pressures. I definitely think that society is a double-edged sword for a lot of things and a lot of different topics where men can do this, men can't do this, women can do this, women can't do this, etc. The list goes on. Um, how do you think that societal pressures have played into men's mental health? If you want to dive a little bit more deep into that, like
What was that?
how do you think societal pressures have played a part in men's mental health?
Um, I think they've played a major role in men's mental health. Just the fact that men feel this pressure that they have to be independent and that they have to be strong. Um, so I feel like that creates such a pressure um, on some people's backs, and sometimes it's really hard to cope with that pressure, deal with that pressure, and then when they can't live up to the expectations, then it's a has very negative impacts where they feel like they're not enough and that they can't do things. Um, I think it's really big when it comes to mental health. Just the pressure put on from society as a whole and not just individualistic things.
Yeah, we definitely pressure men in a lot of different ways that the average person wouldn't pressure a woman or someone else in a specific setting in regards to expression, how they choose to um, you know, understanding what does strong look like because that looks like two completely different things in regards to the perspective and whichever gender that you identify with. But, I think understanding societal pressures and then understanding, why it's important for you. So, why do you think it's important for you to address men's mental health? And what's your take specifically on men's mental health as well?
I think it's important for me personally to address it just because the fact that I've struggled with mental health for so long. Uh, and on top of that, I think just wanting to use the platform that I have, uh, reaching, reaching, reaching people, showing them that it's okay to struggle. The platform that playing soccer here has given me, uh, people at home kind of knowing who I am, or just people on social media that follows me, sees my posts. But I have such a bigger platform than I had before I was here, and to kind of be able to have something that I can use to change people's lives or kind of help make a push to start something. So I think me kind of having the platform to spread awareness and kind of start to start to make a change in things is really big. Um, Personally, for me, with having experienced it, I know and understand what it feels like. Um, I noticed some of the signs, but overall, I just want to be supportive to everybody else, and to show them that there's a way out. That the stigma isn't actually something that should be holding you back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important. And that, everyone who's listening, you should feel safe. You should have the space to express yourselves and not let societal's pressures hold you back. I think you really highlighted, why it's important for you because you have struggled. And I think that there's beauty in the fact that, you are being brave and open and expressing and sharing like, hey, these are things that I have struggled and I've battled with as well, because then you're making it easier for the next person that hears this to feel comfortable and sharing and highlighting that story as well, especially because of your student athlete platform as well. So, as a male student athlete, do you think having conversations around how to support one another on and off the field is taking place enough?
Um, I think it's definitely being talked about more. Um, Still don't think it's being talked about enough. I think people know that the support is there, and we show that the support is there. But at the same time, sometimes it takes a lot more of a push than just talking about it once or twice. Like kind of hammering down the fact that it's there, the support is there, um, especially within teams or within group. Because I mean, if you're in a team, the team is talking about it. Say the coach, like there's a few times where Sasha's brought Chris in, had Chris talk to us, but it's still hard. It's still hard to make this step into kind of going outside of that bubble and pursuing that yourself. So I think more conversations are still needed to where it makes people feel even more comfortable going outside that safety bubble, to support themselves and find help. But I do think that we're starting to do a lot better job of showing the support and being available for the support and making making it feel like it's not a condition.
Mhm. Definitely. And it's really good to hear that, your coach is supportive of the cause and, bringing in you all's sports psych person to have these types of conversations is really crucial and important too. I think you hit on a really good point about, not having enough conversation though. And sometimes as administrators, coaches, faculty staff who are a part of the student athlete experience, we try to do our best to provide you all with the resources and things that you need. What do you think though, or what advice or suggestions would you give for your fellow student athletes to also make sure that they're doing their part and utilizing the resources, or making sure that they're having those conversations with, advisors or, staff members who are in then positions to help enact change as well.
Right. I think mental health isn't always, it doesn't always have to be that extreme, grim, depressed, anxious. It doesn't always have to be those things.
So we were talking about male student athletes and, making sure that student athletes also are showing up. What are some ways in which, or what advice you would give to other student athletes to make sure that they're also doing their part to assist in receiving the proper resources and talking to the right people?
Um, so like I was saying before, um, mental healthness and struggling with mental wellness isn't isn't always going to be that extreme side of depression, um, anxiety. Sometimes it's just kind of struggling with everyday life, whether it be stress or other things. Like it's not always going to be extreme. So I think kind of understanding that individually first, that helps. And I think conversations with friends or um, coaches or other people like that kind of starts that. But I think once that understanding comes and more conversations come, um, more and more people kind of start to accept it, and then that's when it'll be easier for there to be peer to peer talking to help. So peer to peer support, peer to staff support, peer to coach support, and then I think that would lead to more utilization of the resources like um, Jackie or Dr. Hall or Chris. Um, they're very helpful. I mean, I've talked to Chris, I've talked to Jackie, I've had a few conversations with Dr. Hall. Just they're always there. They're a text or a call. Um, so yeah, I think kind of understanding what mental health is first, then leads to people finding that support because I think a lot of the issue now is just the fact that a lot of the time we don't understand that we're struggling with our mental health because we've been dealing with it for so long. I mean, being in high school, playing sports and having to do school and balancing social life with friends and going to church on the weekend is so busy, so packed, and you get overwhelmed. But I think a lot of the time you don't even realize that you're overwhelmed and things like that. So their understanding will lead to a lot more um, support for yourself.
Yeah, definitely. We all do a lot of things that, we feel important to our lives. Right now, other student athletes are practicing the sport that they love, um, trying to get the best grades you possibly can, preparing for your life after sport or life into a pro or professional realm, balancing the expectations of your coaches, your family, your friends, fans. Fans can be crazy ones too that a lot of people sometimes don't even think about, seeing and reading what people are saying about you on social media. I definitely think social media has been a really big part of the uptick in, like, unknown pressures becoming known now, because you're like, oh, all these people said I should have performed like this, or I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. And it's just like, when did these people become subject matter experts in the sport that you play? But just kind of like understanding, like, there's a lot that goes into, the realm of mental health, and, everyone handles that a lot differently. I think that something that would be really interesting to hear more about, though, in the future, in an ideal world, what would you like to see? Where would you like to see the status of men's mental health?
I would like to see the status just be the same all across the board, just the same for everyone. So I think the support for men isn't where it needs to be right now, and in comparison to support for women or other identities, I think it's still not fully there. So I think once it becomes all inclusive and kind of everybody has the same support and it's viewed the same way for each individual, I think that's when we'll see the most progress and the most support.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you think are ways in which we can aid in that support more?
Just more conversations about it, spreading the awareness. The mental health, the athletic department has been doing the mental health games, so we all got a T-shirt warmed up in it. Um, I I used that specifically. Got some pictures during the warm up of one of the games that we did it at, and just was able to post those pictures of me in the shirt, make a caption. But I think talking about it and spreading more awareness is going to be the key into getting it to where it needs to be. So just talking about it more and just bringing more support and awareness to it.
Yeah, definitely. You want to make sure that, you know, there are certain things in life that are considered taboo topics, and mental health has definitely grown to be one of them that we don't want to talk about because everyone at the end of the day isn't qualified to have those conversations. So I just definitely think that the more that you and your peers, specifically men that we're talking about, continue to have these open conversations, whether it's in the locker room, in your dorms, when you're just hanging out and relaxing, just you all being able to provide that space for each other is also something that's really important that'll help shift that narrative. But that in itself takes courage and bravery with, kind of like I said, what you're doing and, expressing like, hey, I'm not perfect. I struggle with these things and I'm looking for my group of supporters to, rally together and us to, overcome and figure out the best mode and resources that we possibly can. And so I definitely understand what you're saying, and it should be equal across the boards. It's definitely not in my perspective, just like yours, and probably in a lot of other people's perspectives as well. But just to allow men that safe space to be like, hey, I'm not okay. And for
Mhm.
that to be okay.
Right. And then I think like us as athletes, male athletes, I know me growing up as a kid, I always looked up to athletes. Um, Coming to the Maryland soccer games, like the athletes were heroes to me. So I think using this platform that we have, um, as athletes, as male athletes, we have a lot more power than we think. And to be able to use that to spread awareness and for people to see, oh, like these athletes are struggling, so it's okay for me to struggle. And if they see that athletes are comfortable talking about it, then maybe they'll feel like what's stopping me from talking about it. So I think just us using our platform is huge.
Definitely. You all have way more of a voice than you think. More people are watching more than you think, and you're inspiring and enacting change more than you think simply by showing up in your true, authentic self. So I definitely encourage and implore you to continue doing that because nobody does it like Micah does. So the next subject that we kind of want to get into is like handling heavy. We know that mental health, like you said, is on a spectrum. It's not always just going to be like high levels of depression or high levels of anxiety. It's just going to be a multitude of things. It could be a roller coaster, it could be really, really highs, and then it evens out. There's just a whole bunch of different ways in which people feel the heaviness of mental health. So you have academic, athletic, personal, and external societal stressors that we just addressed and talked about. What are some of your favorite activities that bring you joy?
I think obviously playing soccer. I mean, even in the downs of soccer, like at the end of the day, just being able to walk out onto the field and kind of do what you love to do is so nice, calming. Like as soon as I step onto the field, everything goes away. It's just me and the ball and the teammates. Like it's it's just the best part of my day. So um outside of that, hanging out with my friends, I'm huge on spending time with the people that I love, trust. So like those are the two biggest things for me that kind of help and bring me the most joy.
Yeah. So sometimes it's hard to speak on things even with the people who bring you the most joy or the activities that might bring you the most joy. And so is there another way that you enjoy expressing your emotions or your thoughts? So I know for me, I'm a big journaler. Like sometimes I can't say what I want to say without writing it down first. So I like to write things out because that's when I can be as real and as raw with myself as I possibly can. So do you write, journal, draw, practice religious approaches, meditate, read a book? Are there any other things that help with your actual expression of your feelings and thoughts that you like to utilize?
Um, a lot of the time, um, either sometimes I just like to listen to music. Music helps me express it a lot. Different different genres, different like vibes, I guess. Um, but then also growing up, going to church every Sunday. I think prayer helps a lot. Um, getting into the Bible, kind of reading the Bible a little bit, reaching out to people from the church, talking to them. That always helps me. But yeah, I think praying is probably the biggest of them.
Mhm. Yeah, it's something that grounds you. You can find comfort in it. You don't need anybody for it. It's just you, yourself, your thoughts, and that sense of security that you're lifting all of your worries off of you and giving them to a higher power.
Mm.
So I absolutely understand. So we've talked about, handling heavy. We've talked about the stigmas of men's mental health. And like you've alluded, we're better together. Everything that we do, if we could have, whether it's peer to peer, the counselors or sports site to the student athletes, administration staff and faculty being educated enough, to make sure that we can assist in the ways in which we can due to our capabilities. I think it's essential that we all do this together. So when we have support and we know that others genuinely care about our well-being, it can sometimes be easier to express our needs and emotions to other. What advice do you have for male coaches coaching young men in regards to mental health?
I think obviously just recognizing signs, but also it's not always visible from the outside. So I think sitting down every once in a while with the player, just asking them how they've been doing, kind of going out of your way just to make sure to have those conversations. Um, it doesn't even have to be in the direction of let me find out if they're okay. Just building a relationship. So I think the emphasis on building relationships from coach to player is massive because then that would give the player trust in the coach so that if anything ever were to happen, I know that the coach is one of the first people I can reach out to. So I think just building of deeper relationships than just off the field are huge for players and coaches.
Yeah, definitely. I know that when I was an athlete, we all struggle and I definitely didn't feel comfortable, especially if it was something personal, sharing it with my coach until we built and established a much better rapport. So, definitely, you know, I think what a coach is today versus what a coach was, maybe like 10 or 15 years ago is completely different because we're in a completely different era of how things are being done. And so, just understanding that in order for, your players to want to open up to you and talk to you about certain things, you have to really do the work and get them to trust you because, so many times players have their worlds are falling and crumbling apart and coaches have absolutely no idea and they just think that wow, this kid is really not doing what they need to do. They're not showing up on the field, on the
Right,
court, wherever, and not knowing that hey, what you're battling with behind closed doors, that silent battle, like it is really impacting you to the point where you're just not showing up in the ways that you typically show up.
right.
So it's just really important that we always try to find ways to build relationship. There's nothing better than genuine connection. Once you get to know someone, you feel that they actually care about you. It's so much easier, which is kind of like how this podcast even came about, getting to know you, getting to know what you care about, your passions, you trusting me trusting you. And it's just like, you know what, in November coming up, it's a part of like not necessarily men's mental health month, but like awareness, and so just kind of like having this to lead into that month of like, let's be more intentional with highlighting and showcasing and providing a space for our male student athletes in regards to their mental health. So, with that too, how do you think men can continue to show up for one another during these tough times? I know you spoke about talking and being there, but what are some true actionable ways that you believe that other male student athletes can continue to show up for one another?
Um, I think kind of eliminating that judgment factor where we don't look down on others for needing help or seeming to need help. That's the biggest thing. Just I know a lot of the time it's just the comfortability of being able to express that you need help. Um, and that comes from feeling like you're being judged. So I think the biggest thing is just kind of eliminating judgment from male to male. Not viewing each other as weak for needing help and things like that. And kind of being open. I think openness will lead to more comfortability in that area. Because I know me personally, I don't typically really talk to a lot of people. I like to hide everything. So I think kind of just being more open with each other, being more supportive, being more understanding, and not having that judgment would help a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes we can be our own biggest critic. The group in which we identify, the gender in which we identify can be our own biggest critic on how we go about things because we've known to go about them a specific way. But you're absolutely right, making sure that we don't judge one another for the things that we go through, or, you know, even if someone goes through something that we don't think is as serious, and then making sure that we respect the fact that this is something that's still serious to them. So regardless of your place or your perspective on a situation, not making anybody's situation feel lesser than it is as well. I think is something that's really important. And then, what do you think are ways in which we can create more safe spaces for men to be open about these moments when they are struggling? So we've talked about like, being open, talking to one another, trusting in your coaches, administration, staff, you name it. But how can we, not just UMD athletics, but like society in general, help be there for men when they are having these moments, Is it like you said earlier, do we check in on you all a little bit more? Because you do have these societal pressures to make sure that, hey, things are good, everything's all right. And like you said, openly, like you don't like to speak to a lot of people too much and you just kind of like to hide it in. So like what are some ways in which we could even be there and check in on you more just to make sure that you know that you're safe and you can talk to us too?
Right. So I think from a societal perspective, just ending gender stereotypes, where men are these strong, immovable people that don't have the same emotions that women or people of other identities have. Um, just kind of everybody being the same, everybody being on the same footing. Um, and then support from support from here, I think could look like um, little events here and there where we kind of emphasize mental health, especially with men, where we get it to be more talked about, more focused on. And I think people having that awareness and understanding again will lead to the most. So I think maybe whether it be GSAC events or other little events that we could put on in Gossett to show that men's mental health is real. It's not something that needs to be frowned upon or viewed differently. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, definitely agree. You know, I think that we're absolutely taking the right steps and strides too, and ensuring that, we are highlighting events and bringing awareness to things that are really important and important to our student athletes, the general public, etc. And so just really making sure that we continue honing in and bringing that continual awareness, as you said, but again, it's something that, I look forward to hopefully you being, the spearheader on as we continue this movement and, you bring others along with you. So, you even compiling a group of other young men and being like, hey, find that group that's comfortable, that's ready to go. And then, things are always better when it comes from the student's perspective and when it comes from the student's voice. And then you all really lead that. And, we do our part as administration to help guide it and give you the resources that you need to be successful. But I definitely think, with you at the forefront of it and you cultivating a group of young men together who are open, I think that, we could really make some things shake in the next 2 years for sure and moving forward and like to bring way more awareness to men's mental health.
yeah, definitely.
All right, so before we get into the last bit of our podcast, is there anything else that you'd like to kind of like just highlight or share in regards to your mental health, men's mental health, your support for the cause, how to handle heavy better? Is there anything else that you'd like to just kind of like share or highlight?
I think the last thing I have is just men's mental illness is real. Um, the signs aren't always obvious. Just find think just finding friends that you trust, being able to talk to them, people being understanding and supportive of their own friends, just checking in on people, but it's not always out there in the open. So just being able to listen to someone that needs it. And then for the people struggling with it, don't be afraid to reach out. Um, I'm always here if anyone needs to reach out. The staff is always here if anyone needs to reach out. There's so much support, and from my experience, there hasn't really been anybody that makes me feel uncomfortable reaching out for support. So, kind of understanding that there's not that much judgment around it, and that you won't be judged for it for reaching out. Just feeling comfortable with reaching out to people when you need help. I think that's the biggest for me.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. All right, Micah, we're going to get into the part of the podcast where we're going to do rapid fire questions. So what you do is you answer with the first thing or first response that comes to your mind, okay?
Yeah,
All right. Going on a walk or working out?
working out.
Professional soccer player or a construction entrepreneur?
A soccer player.
Chick-fil-A milkshake or a Five Guys milkshake?
I'll definitely check.
All right. So, thank you for participating in such a great conversation today and your constant advocacy towards destigmatizing men's mental health and student athletes. Before we wrap up, share with our listeners how people can follow you for updates, reach out to you, or connect more to talk about this.
Um, my Instagram. I'm always on my Instagram. If anybody ever wanted to reach out or just see what I'm up to, at Mikah Seger _. Um, and then my email is
Don't,
Micah.
don't, no, don't do
All right,
that.
just my Instagram. Always on my Instagram.
Okay. And to all of our student athletes, here are a few upcoming events for this week that is coming up on the 23rd. We have a Tech in the Workshop presentation on October 24th. And then that is it for that week, but we do encourage you all to be on the lookout for upcoming things in regards to the Internship Academy, Leadership Academy, and the NIL Career Meetup is also approaching in December. Thank you, Mikah, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, and keep up the great work.
Thank you.